Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck, aka Lowell Johnson. And the energy shift focus of this episode is going to be on the Schumann resonance. It's where I began when these energetic shifts were starting to take place within me, and I was looking for some meaning for that. Somehow I came across this tool, and when I did my research on the Schumann resonance, I found that it was measuring changes in energy. Now, I'm going to share a few things that I found out about it and what I learned. So let's go to my bookmarks here quickly. And if you were to search Schumann resonance sources, what Google tells us, it gives us a reference to Wikipedia, where it describes this as a phenomenon that excited by lightning discharges. I'm not taking anything away from that because it's absolutely true. But when we go to Wiki to see what it had to say more about it, I found it much more interesting to the timing of when this was all developed. Of course, the Schumann resonance was named after Wilfried Otto Schumann. And he came up with this. He was a physicist that came up with this formula in 1952, although the studies of the phenomenon around the ionosphere actually began right at the turn of the 19th century. Between 1893 and 1902, I had found some scientists that had kind of opened it up. What fascinates me about it is that the phenomenon of this excitation in some kind of a barometer to measure it with, we didn't even have those tools in place until the early 1950s. And so we didn't have a frame of reference. We weren't looking at the Earth energetically like we can now. So there are two resources that I was shown. One was an Italian source. And this is the website. So it's going to show you the current conditions today. And I understood that there was another station in Russia that also captured the same information. Well, when I had this discussion with Dave Wallace to get his opinion on the nature of this, he had informed me he was well aware of all of this, and he's certainly been to Russia many times, like he's been to Europe, and he had commented on the condition of the equipment that's there in Russia. It's been there for a long time, and it hasn't been upkept. So it may explain some of the dropouts that we see when we're getting reportings. But what I found interesting here is that on the Italian site, if you look closely at the image, it's pointing to the image from the Russian site. So I don't know whether we have more than one source or not. Regardless, my point in all of this is that to me, the Schumann resonance is it's a barometer for us. It's a measurement tool for us to indicate changes in energy. But if you think that it's limited to just lightning strikes, it resonates with all kinds of seismic activity. So when that kind of came in my awareness, I had a better idea of what was causing the lightning strikes in the first place, and earthquakes, and the tsunamis, and the volcanic activity that we see that's now associated with the changes that are taking place. What I concluded was that all this phenomenon was created by energy that we're getting from the sun. So we'll stop this part right here, and I'll follow up some more with some resources when it comes to the solar storm energy, on where you can find resources that'll discuss the nature of that kind of phenomenon. Stay tuned. Once I associated the Schumann resonance with other types of seismic activity, I was curious about the extent of it. And I knew that there were earthquakes that happened on the planet. I was shocked when I learned the number of that amount of activity on a daily basis. I thought that there were a few here and there. There are hundreds. of earthquakes that happen every day to a particular degree. But as you can see, that activity is on the rise and much more severely degreed. So in order for me to help you understand the solar storm and activity portion of these episodes, I'm going to lay a foundation with some information and resources from the more scientifically minded, and I have a list of references for you. The first ones I would consider interpreters, and I'll show you what I mean by that. The first one is suspicious observers. Some of you may already be familiar with Ben Davidson and his work, but he lends a perspective that helped me come to terms with the phenomenon. And he has a daily update of about 5 minutes every day that just updates us on the solar phenomena. As I've been watching his information and the Schumann resonance and seeing the synchronicities between the two, it just helped me understand better the nature of all this solar influence that's coming. Another good resource is called Dutchsinse. And this guy, I've watched him for a while. The tools that he shares with us are amazing, but his ability now, after he's been studying this phenomenon for a while, to actually predict the locations, given conditions that we're going through of earthquakes that are going to take place, is pretty fascinating, if you ask me. Then there's Dr.Tamitha Skov, and she has a lot of the same information, just presented in a different way. I like listening to her, but you're going to be invested to about 30 or 45 minutes with Dr. Skov, but it's worth the time. If you really want to get in-depth understandings of the phenomenon that's going on, I highly recommend spending some time just listening to what she has to say. And then there is the Earthmaster, who kind of combines all of these. He's just another resource, and there are many more than these, but these are the ones that resonate the most with me. Then there's another section of resources that I would call data-driven, and they would be, for example, the USGS site, where here you can see a map of the most current locations, their degrees. It's a government resource, so you would have to take this for a grain of salt. But as you can see, you can pinch this map and look at anything you want to look at. You can zoom in, and it'll give you additional information on the details of any particular phenomenon going on. Then there is, because the nature of what the USGS shows us does not reflect the earthquake in Canada. Canada has its own resource, and it shows you that there's just as much activity going on in that part of North America as any other. And then the last one is a resource that I first found when I was looking for volcanic activity. This one is Volcanoes and Earthquakes.com. And between these resources, they are all what I rely on for information and to kind of establish the conclusions I've come to. They've been reliable for me for years, and so I put them out there now for you to draw your own conclusions. The vibration matching portion of these episodes is where I'll share some recent activity that I've captured. The first of which is I was instructed to focus my attention on Rigel to receive some downloads. If you are familiar with what Dave has taught us about CLPF and CLPT, continuous light pulse frequencies within continuous light pulse transmissions, you'll see some evidence. And when I zoomed in on the planet, it's almost like I can see the symbols being flashed to me. The second of which, I focused my attention on Sirius and saw some evidence of some traffic that was actually moving in the sky that I'll share with you. And the final was I was looking for some communication from something beyond Earth, and got a flash response out of the dark sky when I was looking at Sirius on another occasion that I will share with you here as well. I'll close these ShiftWatch episodes with a feature I call PS, where other extraordinary experiencers from within the tribe will come and share their perspective on hot topics for the day. Today, you get me. And I've had this remembrance in my field for a while, and I'll share it with you. Um, most of you know who Reuben Langdon is, and for those of you that don't, he's been a researcher and an experiencer, and he's produced a series of episodes of people having extraordinary experiences called Interview with ED. There are 3 seasons of it on Gaia, and I was asked to appear on an episode in season 2. It reminded me of the time when we were in Mount Shasta filming the content for the episodes. And after day 1, I had met with Reuben first thing the next day while we were all prepping to go out into the field to, film some more content and some B-roll along the way. And while we were waiting for everyone else, he was showing me and editing some of the filmage from the day before. While he was showing it to me, he was sharing me a story of somebody else who had had extraordinary experiences. And along the way, as he continued to tell the story of this experience, it got embellished a little bit more until it reached the point where the embellishments could no longer be remembered to the original story by whoever the teller was. And Reuben was offering that advice for me moving forward. I've had those words in the back of my mind always, and especially after I began to have some additional multidimensional experiences. When the first of them, after Telos had happened, it was my incident that some of you have heard about and seen photographs of with Kumu and the light beings. And when I shared that at first with people I trusted inside the community, it wasn't well received. And I was surprised by that. I didn't understand somebody who was having multidimensional experiences, that those who claim to have an awareness of those, it either threatened them or they wanted to dispute it in some way, like there was their side and my side. Anyway, it was the reason why I clammed up for a while. If this audience wasn't interested in hearing these other things, maybe it was just best to share them only within the close circle of people in the tribe that I developed, and no further than that. It was during this time recently, within the last 2 months, and I'm not the only one who has been going through these energy changes and the focus for our own individual attention. It was pointed out to me to tend to my own flame. That while I was trying to wait and assist others to continue their own metaphysical evolutions, I was neglecting my own and not paying attention to the downloads I was receiving. And so thus I was kind of stunting my metaphysical growth. And when the realization came around, because it wasn't that I had not stopped having these extraordinary experiences, I was ignoring them while I was, waiting for something. Well, that's been corrected, as some of you know now, and I'm going to continue to tend to my own flame, which is the message that I have for everybody else. There are extraordinary things trying to communicate with us if you're paying attention. And the one thing that I concluded through all of this that I will leave you with is no one can stop you from having these multidimensional experiences. No one. We just need to find other places where it's safe and comfortable and risk-free for us to share these experiences with others. And that's what we've been doing for a while. So while I close this, I'll remind you that we still host podcasts on Saturday morning that are live, 9 a.m. Pacific time. You are totally invited and can find the credentials on my website, lowelljohnson.info, to join us on those podcasts on Saturdays, where we encourage you to open up and ask questions you can. So until then, I will implore you to enjoy this day, and I will leave you with namaste.